Well, welcome to the Barna Resilient Pastor podcast, where we help pastors lead with wisdom, hope, and courage in a changing world. I am Sharon Miller, and this podcast is part of Barna's mission to encourage and equip pastors to be resilient, spiritually, emotionally, and in their leadership. Together, we'll explore new research and real conversations to help you understand the times and know what to do. If you're not doing so already, go to barna.com and sign up for the free Barna email to access the latest Barna articles, resources, and special discount offers. Well, friends, this is the last episode of The Resilient Pastor for this season. And so Glenn and Rich, this is kind of our recap. Like, you know, the episode of Friends, or, you know, where they show like all clips. You know, the clips from the different
like a montage. Yeah.
This is our moment. And so Glenn, what are some of your highlights from this season?
You know, Sharon, I think our banter has gotten funnier. I think we've gotten funnier. You know, I think you especially, you know. I've actually really enjoyed. We've had a few episodes where it's like no guest, and the three of us have been talking, and I have loved asking you questions, asking Rich questions, and hearing each other kind of play off of each other and comment on this. I think that's been part of the fun. Is we spend some time together. We have had moments of hanging out, but we don't often have these spaces to just kind of like, let's really just talk shop, talk church together, and so that kind of church talk has been fun.
Yeah. I've actually really enjoyed the episodes where it's just the three of us as well. And so I think we need some listener feedback to just tell us, like,
yes.
Do we need to just have our egos brought down to size and it's just us to think that?
Tell us, listeners. Tell us you loved us as much as we loved us.
Or is this something that you would like more of? But yes. I've really enjoyed it as well. Rich, how about you? What have been some of your highlights from this season?
Well, the two of you have been major highlights for me. All right. And they didn't pay me to say this here. Two conversations in particular. I'm not just like recording them. I listen to the podcast as well. Okay. Same. Glenn works out in the morning. I don't, but I do like wash dishes and stuff. And as I'm washing dishes, I'm listening to the podcast. And there's two conversations. One, I really love the worship conversation with you, Glenn, you, Luke, and Anna, and Sharon. You had a wonderful conversation. That was a really phenomenal podcast interview. And the goal that you guys were throwing out there was just fantastic. And then Sharon, your interview with Jenny Catrone, I forgot the pronunciation of her last name. Catrin. And her definition of culture is one that I've been using a lot. I love the simplicity of it, just who we are and how we work together to achieve our mission. And that's just a really nice. So that was two wonderful conversations. And of course, all the other stuff. Sharon, I still am grieving with you. I know the Duke loss was really hard. And so I didn't want to bring that up. I didn't want to bring it up.
You just did. Oh,
but here's the thing, Glenn. Here's the thing. I don't know why I said that. And so I just want to just let Sharon know that, I'm with you.
Well, listen, every sports fan knows they get our hopes up and then they smash our hopes.
Yes.
Well, I feel like you were with me. And I wish everyone could see our text thread when Duke was playing St. John's and how I was trying to be like a good sportsman. And apparently it came off as patronizing.
I didn't like it.
And unhelpful.
It was a bless their hearts. It was a bless their heart kind of moment. Yeah.
Now here's the thing. I don't want to go down too much of a road here, but whenever your team is not doing well, the best thing is to say nothing. I mean, just go dark. I mean, it's just like, don't say anything. So I'm just like
pat you on the head,
especially when you're the winning team. Sharon's like, oh, sorry, Rich. It was like
they really gave us. They played us tough.
It was a great run. I was like, I really love Sharon, but I was like, well, this is not the right time. this is the time.
Another highlight of this year has been the late night text from Sharon in our text thread about AI. The AI doomsday. That was a highlight for me.
Yeah, she was
well, I know you're on West Coast. Late night isn't that late for you.
No.
Well, so for me, I also really loved the worship conversation, and that conversation, and then the elder board conversation.
Yeah.
Both of those podcasts turned me into the pastor who sends podcasts to their staff, which has to be like the most annoying thing. But I sent the elder board one to our elder board, and I was like, I really want y'all to listen to this, and I want to talk about it. And same with my worship pastor and our worship team staff. And so we're actually next week, we're going to sit down and debrief that conversation. And so it has been a true resource to me as well. So good job, guys.
Good job.
And good job.
Good job.
St. John's.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, good. All right, sure.
Listen, we're going to have a conversation today about evangelism, and we got a great one with Ger Jones up in LA at Vintage, also very, very connected with Alpha. But before we get into that conversation, I just want to thank one of our partners, World Vision. Together with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and the Barna team, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of kids and teens who are in your care. So you can download this free resource, Parenting the Open Generation, and you can download it at worldvision.org/resilient26. That's resilient26. Ger Jones is the lead pastor of Vintage Church in Santa Monica, California, a church that he planted in 2011, and it's grown into a thriving multi-campus community. I've had the privilege of being up there, speaking at a couple of their things on a Sunday, and they do this like church-wide retreat once a year. Ger is passionate about evangelism in a secular age, helping churches create environments where people can ask real questions, encounter the presence of God, and come to faith in authentic ways. But before we get into that, guys, I want to actually read some data here about Gen Z and their attitudes about evangelism, because I think this could be a fun place to start. Barna did some new research on Gen Z, and it showed kind of an interesting shift in how evangelism is understood. So 4 out of 5, actually over 4 out of 5 U.S. Christian Gen Z teens, and that percent, but 83% said, quote, letting your actions speak rather than using words to explain your faith to someone, quote, is most likely to create a positive response among non-believers. So 83% say, yeah, my actions speaking louder than my words, that's going to be better. It's going to create a positive response. And then 50% of Gen Z said, Christian Gen Z, said that basically counts as evangelism, is just letting my actions count. So I just have this thought, without quoting that, line that may or may not have emerged from St. Francis that everybody, always misquotes or quotes, whatever, without referring to that, what do you think about this changing attitudes towards evangelism? Sharon, let's start with you.
I mean, my first question is this that new? Like, this seems like kind of an idea that cycles back through every couple decades or so, the importance of having this congruent life, that evangelism isn't just about, walking people through the 4 spiritual laws, but living in a way that is congruent with Jesus. That said, I would say, and again, this is actually not original to Gen Z, this idea that good works are essentially the same thing as evangelism. That is not a new idea at all. But I think it is important to say, and I mean, you guys feel free to push back. I would say pretty strongly that is not evangelism. It's not evangelism. Now, one term I recently was introduced to, maybe you guys have heard this before, and I'm just slow to this, but I recently heard the term pre-evangelism. And I really like that idea of thinking of what does it look like to engage in pre-evangelism, where you are building this relationship or building your credibility or helping soften the soil of your culture And that absolutely comes through your lifestyle, and that there should not be a gap between how we live and what we are teaching. But I do think that to make that leap, that how we live is evangelism, is really problematic, and actually has led to the death of a lot of mainline Protestant denominations. So I'm going to lead with that hot take.
I like it.
How about you, Rich?
Well, I think in many ways, I understand the impulse, first of all, that when people see the inconsistency and the harm that has come at the hands of the church, people want to know, are there actions, are there works of compassion and justice beyond just words? And so I understand that. And secondly, when evangelism has been seen through the lens of coercion and prepackaged formulas, it feels like it doesn't really work. At the same time, the gospel is a concrete announcement that something has definitively happened in Jesus Christ.
Right, that's it.
And without that level of specific articulation, here's what happens. Faith becomes generic and at times even confusing. And so if Christians believe that something unique has happened in Jesus, that uniqueness requires storytelling. And so it requires some particular articulation. And so the gift of action is that it creates credibility. It creates curiosity. And when that credibility and curiosity meet, now we have communication and proclamation now. But it requires an articulation of story. That those seeds just came to me, Glenn. I want to just tell you.
I know, I'm getting blessed.
You're like speaking his love language. Glenn just got chills.
So it is, to your point, that St. Francis thing, if preach the gospel and if necessary, use words. Yeah, I get that. But for me, it's also, preach the gospel and because it's necessary,
yes.
Use words. And so I would not subscribe to that being evangelism, but being a means towards evangelism.
Both of you said this pushback, and I really love that, because I would agree. Like, evangelism, even just semantically, euangelion is good news, and good news is an announcement. It always was that. It was that when Romans used it as their announcement about Caesar, and it was that when the early Christians used it as an announcement about Jesus. And the announcement is that Jesus is the saving king, I heard Michael Horton, a Reformed theologian, put it this way, God for us in Christ, that's fine. That's great too. There are definite ways to sort of, like you said, Rich, it's a particular story that requires a particular proclamation. Good. I think it's total conjecture here. My kids would be on the young end of Gen Z. I wonder if some of this shying away from proclamation or words or whatever is because instead of announcement, the church has chosen argument, and argument is really off-putting to people. Right. So, Rich, you named, there's a credibility issue. Our actions have been incongruent, and there's hypocrisy. So let's start by making our actions congruent with the thing we confess. Correct. Confession should be congruent with our actions, 100%. And when you choose to use words that are announcing, not arguing. And I say this, I say that, and then let me contradict myself. Their apologetics is making a comeback right now. I mean, there's this guy, Wes Huff, who, whether it's on the Joe Rogan show or the Diary of a CEO podcast, 3 million views, like some of those popular shows on a secular audience are engaging with an apologetics guy who's not arguing in a contentious way, but he's very clearly saying, no, this is who's going to hell, or this is who's going to heaven, or this is how. So you could say, well, he's doing more announcing than arguing. I think maybe that would be a better characterization of what Wes is doing. But what do you think about that framing of announcement versus argument?
That's really interesting. It reminds me, I had a conversation just 2 days ago, I think. One of our neighbors is a pastor, and she's also a teaching assistant at Duke Divinity School. And she said she's been TAing for a class called Theodicy and Evangelism. And when she said that, I was like, tell me more. I want to hear more about this. And she was explaining it to me. And I said, I feel like what you're describing is an apologetics class, like that he's explaining how to reconcile ourselves with, suffering and evil in the world. And she said, no, the professor is strongly opposed to apologetics. And I was so fascinated by that. And I said, well, what do you mean? Because I think of apologetics very broadly as just sort of like, explaining, engaging those hard questions that people have. But I think what he was saying is was associating apologetics with being in a defensive posture.
Got it.
And saying essentially that God does not need to be defended by us, which is why he very intentionally was using the word evangelism in this class. And so that just reminded me, because I think what you're saying, it could be argued with Wes Huff and similar ones, is what he is doing actually evangelism or apologetics? I guess it just depends on how you define it. But I do really like that idea that we aren't defending, Jesus. We should be able to give a reason for the hope that we have. That's obviously a biblical mandate. So that's just what comes to mind for me. How about you, Rich?
I love it. I love the argument versus announcement framework there. I would say, however, depending on what you're announcing and how you're announcing it, it can be just as contentious as argument. And so people can announce Jesus is Lord and you're going to hell. That's the announcement. And it's just like, well, there's you might as well just argue your way with someone else as well. So I think it's the kind of announcement. I think it's the spirit in which the good news is announced. It's announcing God's saving love in Jesus. But I think it's I'm announcing that something has happened, which is, at New Life, whenever someone gets baptized or we have trainings about how do you tell your story? How do you, when the conversation emerges, how do we train people to tell a coherent story of their journey and their encounter with Jesus? So it's a story, an announcement that's coming from a firsthand experience, done in humility, done in a way that meets the moment. But I think we do need far more announcing and the apologetics thing. My early years as a Christian, I was arguing with everyone. I mean, if I saw Jehovah's Witnesses on the street, I'd say, "Hey, come inside. Let's have a chat." And I had my verses already, or Hebrews 1 and John 1 and all the rest there. I was all set. But I like the framework. I just think, how are we announcing? That's the question.
It is such a great thing, Rich, which ties in with what Sharon was saying about defensiveness. And I think that's true. Like, Sharon, there is a charitable way to say apologetics is just really just the reasons for our faith. And there's incredible work from so many apologetics people, many of whom we are connected to and know, and is really equipping the church to know that our faith is not a fairy tale, that there's actually some really good historical reasons. We talk about this at Alpha. There's a lot of ways to know, and science is only one way of knowing. History is another way of knowing. Love is another way of knowing. So there's relational knowing, there's historical knowing, there's so eyewitness accounts matter of the resurrection, all that sort of stuff. In 2020, Barna did a study on digital evangelism. They found that 52% of churched Christians agree that, quote, posting about my faith online is a very important way that I share my faith with others, end quote. Now, that's interesting because that seems to be seems like tone can easily be lost when we post online. But I'll tell you, I'll just give one comment and then I'd love to hear you guys react to that. I think the other thing is lost when we post online and think that we're announcing our faith or sharing our faith is that we miss the opportunity for curiosity. And the ability to ask. So another, we got argument, we got announcement. What about asking? And, Ger is super, what he runs at Vintage is Alpha. We run Alpha as well, Rock Harbor. We this current season of Alpha, we have almost 200 people that have been coming for 6 to 8 weeks. And what I love about Alpha is it trains the people who are helping and facilitating tables. It trains you in the art of someone says something and you go, that's so interesting. Tell me more about that. As opposed to like, I've got an answer for that, or I've got an announcement for that. I got an argument for that. So when you hear the stat about 52% of church-going Christians are like, yeah, posting online is important. It's an important way that I share my faith. How do you react to that, Rich?
I mean, on some level, I think I have tried to do that myself, actually. I have, the gap, I think, in my own social media presence or announcing is, you named it right there. I think a growth area for me is how can I reasonably invite curiosity and conversation, which is very hard to do on a social media space, depending on who shows up and all the rest there. But I've tried to, when I post on social media, I often have in mind people who are not followers of Jesus and people who have given up on the church. And so whatever I post, it's usually in service of those groups of people, which is why when some folks get upset with me for whatever, I'm just like, well, you weren't my audience.
You weren't my audience, yeah.
And I'm looking to reach other people. But I love it. And I think, and again, the way I do it, and I've learned, I've looked back at things I've posted in 2015, 2016, and I'm just like, there was a different spirit that I shared things with. And it took Rosie to say, that's beneath you, in order for it to change my ways. So I'm still learning.
You've helped me as well, Rich. So. Sharon, how about you? Just a quick reaction on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Rich. Like, I definitely share my faith. Like, there is an aspect of leadership and, dare I say, discipleship that I think we can use social media for. My only concern would be anyone who says that this is a significant part of sharing their faith in the same way that they have, like, a bumper sticker about Jesus on their car and think that that is sharing their faith, or they wear t-shirts, or they listen to worship music in their workplace. Like, none of these things are wrong, but they're also easy ways to delude yourself into thinking like I'm having this impact without actually engaging people face to face, like incarnationally. And so I guess I'm saying there's nothing wrong with it on its face, as long as it isn't sort of your escape hatch from having to do that incarnational work in relationship with people as well.
That's really, really good. That's really incarnational and relational work. I mean, that's it, yeah. So in some ways, the Gen Z impulse of I want to show this with my life is right. That's a good impulse, because how we treat people and how we live is observable only when there is that proximity. So to applaud the Gen Z impulse, that's right. But then to add to it training in using our words to ask questions, using our words to share our hope, using our words to provide an announcement in a non-defensive posture. Well, I think we solved it, guys. That's good.
There it is. There it is. I'm
not sure what else Ger is going to add to this. Yeah.
I'll wait for the 30-page ebook.
Well, no, it's going to be a great combo with Ger. Let's go to that now. Oh, my friend Ger Jones, it is so good to talk to you today, man. Welcome.
Thanks, Glenn. It's awesome to see you, mate.
Listen, we are talking online, but we are in truth. Yeah, I could say an hour away. I could say 2 hours away, depending on the time of day that you commute from Santa Monica down to Costa Mesa. And ironically, the last time we were in the same room together was in Oxford or London, or one of the two cities.
I know, bizarre, isn't it? It's good to have you on the West Coast. I just wish we saw each other more.
I know. We do have to fix that. Listen, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about, and one of the place I want to start is actually a continuation of a conversation we had when we were together. Now, to our listeners, I just want you to picture this, okay? Ger and I were at this Alpha event in it was a showcase, these churches in London, Oxford, whatever. And somehow people thought it was the right thing to do to put you and me on the front row next to each other, which was
carnage,
just a disaster waiting to happen. So we decided to be a little bit more grown up, and so instead of talking or passing notes, we were texting each other. But we started to have this conversation about this cultural moment and the shifts that have occurred in our culture over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I wonder, Ger, you've been pastoring in America for a long time. and you've been in the West Coast for a long time. What are some of the shifts you're seeing in attitudes toward Christianity?
Well, we are seeing a shift, and it's not as huge maybe as it's just like the first fruits of it, but we are seeing a shift. I think when we first came to Los Angeles, most people were very negative towards Christians, very negative towards Christianity, very hostile. It was quite hard to kind of come out that you're a Christian. Lots of people would keep it buried. A person came to faith on Alpha, and she was like 28-year-old, very Los Angelino, and she said to me, "I can't come out as a Christian. Otherwise, I'll just lose my job. I'll lose my friends. I may be able to say I'm a Jesus follower, but even then." But I think things have shifted from that hostility, or starting to shift, particularly with the younger generations, away from hostility to curiosity, away from animosity to hunger. They're still cautious, because organized religion and politics have really kind of put them off a certain Christian persona and church persona. But the person of Jesus and their longing for something that the secular story isn't giving is kind of coming together a bit. And so we are seeing that increasing hunger. But I would say it's more about Jesus and spirituality than church and religion. And so there's still a cautiousness towards church and Christians, but an openness, I think, to spirituality and the person of Jesus.
It's interesting that you're seeing this, up front and in person. The data from Barna reveals something similar to that. In 2022, there was a survey of U.S. adults, and 3 out of 4 said, "Yeah, I want to grow spiritually," but it's kind of ambiguous, right? I want to grow spiritually. And a similar number said, "Yeah, I believe in a higher power." Nearly half said that they're more open to God, whatever that is, today more than they were before the pandemic. I want to start with this. Do you think the pandemic in some ways is part of the reason? I mean, you lived through, LA in the pandemic was a nightmare, and it was so brutal on people. Do you think that played a role in this?
Oh, I think it played a role in everything. Even how burned out we are at times. It was just, no, but I think doing Alpha after the pandemic, I think we saw an increasing desperation for something that truly satisfies. I think authority figures were so undermined in credibility. I think what people were looking toward as their hope was so discredited that I think people came away so disillusioned and tried to re-enter life, but there was still some pain of there's got to be more than this. And so I do think there's been an increase in hunger of, and so on the one hand, disillusionment, and on the other hand, hunger, therefore. And that accelerated. I think that was coming, but that certainly accelerated during COVID for here. I mean, lots of people lost their friends, they lost their jobs, they lost their the entertainment world has been decimated still after COVID here. Then the fires came last year. I think they've had their foundations rocked. Many of them have fled to Nashville to try and find that again. But certainly in our city, there's such as a pain from the last 5 years that people have been looking to, can something actually remain secure when everything else vanished?
When you encounter this, are these are people coming in even on a Sunday? I know we'll get to Alpha in a second, but are there particular ministries in the church or events that you do midweek or Sundays itself, maybe, where people are like, that's their first point of entry, if you will? Like, where are they? How are they expressing this?
Yeah, I would say it's coming on a Sunday. We work really hard to have Sundays that we would call are both kind of deep and wide, for the exploring and the following. And so we create space where people can bring their friends and non-Christians can just show up and feel safe and feel helped in their exploration of faith in Jesus. And we overtly welcome them. So I do think there's a space. We're now aware that every Sunday, someone's coming to the church for maybe the first time in a long time, or maybe the first time ever. We're very aware of that. And we never want to dumb down the gospel. We never want to not feed the Christian. We love depth. We love great theology. We love great teaching. But we do want to acknowledge, there's people here who have, and I say, I'm so thankful that you're here. And I also know what it's like to walk into a church very scared about what's going to happen. So we just want to know that you're welcome. And we put them at ease because we know they're there.
Yeah.
And they're searching.
Ger, you would never say this about yourself, but I have seen you minister, and I've been to your church a few times, and it's an amazing thing that you're doing, and a lot of it emerges out of your own story and your own journey. And I think in so many ways, God knew exactly what He was doing, calling you to LA and calling you to the West Coast, and I wonder if you would share just a bit about what is it about your story, your journey, the things you witnessed, even in the UK, that has prepared you for this, that God is making use of this. And I my hope here for the pastors and church leaders who are listening, number one, for better or for worse, things that kind of begin out here on the West Coast tend to make their way through the rest of the country. That old phrase, like California sneezes and America catches a cold, So, I mean, for better or worse, like people are seeing, there's a revival and all this stuff. Great. But your word there about curious but cautious, still a little skeptical about church. But I've seen you do such an amazing job of you're disarming, but you don't, it's not because you're quote unquote watering down anything, but somehow you're able to connect with them and then speak to them. What is it about your story? Take your time here.
Well, I'd say it's my wife and I. We met at a church called HTB, Holy Trinity Brompton in London. And Lizzie and I have very different backgrounds, but we have the same passion, which is fundamentally we care deeply, deeply for the lost. And we empathize with them. We love them. And that's for different reasons. I think, firstly, I grew up in a very atheistic culture in the north of England. I was going to church, but all my friends were non-Christians, would never go to church. And I loved them. They were my best friends. And I was just, Lord, I remember praying, how do I help them find Jesus? That was a long prayer of mine. And at the same time, I even knew then bringing them to church was not necessarily going to help them. In fact, I did bring them to church once, and it was just so off-putting in many ways that it was really painful. At the same time, Lizzie, my wife, grew up as a non-Christian completely. I hadn't really understood anything about Jesus until a hairstylist at the age of 19 shared Jesus with her. And she had a radical conversion. That night, she invited Jesus into her life and just had an encounter of Christ and wanted to tell everyone about him. And all of her world are non-Christians, right? And so when we both found our way to London in our late 20s, I was a lawyer and she was working at HTB by then. And we both shared this passion for people to come to know Jesus. And we found ourselves at a church called HTB, which I found was the first church I'd ever attended that truly equipped the church to see their friends come to know Christ in a way that resonated with their friends, in a way that was culturally and socially and relationally accessible for their friends. I'd always grown up in a burden for evangelism, but terrible methodology, preaching on the streets, door knocking, bait and switch questionnaires outside of nightclubs, all this type of, those questionnaires? Do you know those questionnaires where you go, hey, what kind of drink did you have? I had a gin and tonic. How many did you have? I had 4. But did it really quench your thirst? Is there a thirst in your life that can't be quenched? It was brutal.
I think my church in Malaysia ran the same playbook, bro. I didn't do door to door. It was horrible. Oh, no.
So it was brutal. I went to HTB and I found 2 things. I found a deep, deep passion for the lost, but also a deep awareness of how we can reach them in a way that they're going to love the process. They're going to feel loved. They're going to feel heard. They're going to feel that we're not preaching at them, but listening and coming to them. And we just fell in love with that. We fell in love with kind of the humble charismatic that also was part of evangelism, that God wants to meet people, not just be understood, but to be known by the non-Christian, to have a wonder, as John's gospel would say, like, yes. I wonder what that was.
Yes.
And so I fell in love with HTB at that time. I thought for the rest of my life, I'm going to just work in the law firm and bring my friends to Alpha, bring my colleagues to Alpha, bring my boss to Alpha every Wednesday. That was the rest of my life. And really, I forgot to say, but I came to HTB because I kind of came back to Christ on Alpha. I'd gone away for many years and been hurt by the church, been hurt by various things. I'd done some stupid things. But I came back to a church that allowed me space to process my doubts, to take my time in exploring Jesus. They loved me along the journey. I felt I'd done too much to ever come to church and survive judgment. I thought I'd burn up on arrival. So HTB became this place of radical grace for a person who was deeply ashamed of their past. That I thought no one would ever accept me. But I found grace. I found a program called Alpha that allowed me to go on a journey to explore. And Lizzie and I just thought, that's it. This is it. Why would we do anything else but serve the Lord in London? And we have all of our non-Christian friends who we love, and we're just going to invite them to Alpha, and that's our life. And so we moved to Switzerland after that. My job took me to Switzerland, and we just did the same thing there. We ran Alpha at the church. I was bringing my friends from work for a big company there to Alpha. And so HTB gave us a language that really matched my heart of loving the lost where they're at.
Yeah.
And going to them in love and helping them belong before they believe, all these types of things.
Yeah.
Just gave me the language for it. And ever since then, I've just been captivated by still the passion for the lost, but also a methodology that actually gives legs to that passion.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing the methodologies that really kind of check the box from a religious duty perspective. So you go home saying, I did it, but no one was helped, if we're honest, So anyway, that's a bit of it. And so we love doing that.
You know what I hear in that, Ger, is it's not just, you're right. It does give you a language for it, but you found a posture that you have internalized, and it's one you carry too, of humility, of genuine care and empathy, of curiosity. And I think sometimes it can be so, for pastors, for church leaders, we've forgotten what it's like to not know. We've forgotten what it's like to only have our stereotypes or our false impressions about God and the church. We come in thinking God is angry, thinking God is, out to get you, whatever, and we've forgotten that. And so it is so good for us to be around people who don't believe, who don't know. You're like an alpha Jedi master. You lead these master classes, literally. And I love it. People come from all over the world, literally. And I want you to talk about that in a moment. But I love Alpha. I got to experience it maybe 10 or 11 years ago on a trip with Todd Proctor, our mutual friend, to the UK, to HTB, introduced it at the church I was at in Colorado Springs. And then, of course, coming here to Rock Harbor now, it's been a long time, church that runs Alpha as well. And at Barna, we're big fans of Alpha because it's such a helpful mechanism to get people around a table and start, having conversations. Could you talk about what Alpha has done to help the culture of evangelism at Vintage, at your church?
Well, I think, I don't think I could be a pastor without something like Alpha. I think, first of all, when I came to America 20 years ago to pastoring, I realized that I shared with the American church a deep, deep delight in discipleship and depth. And a few people were reacting maybe against the seeker-sensitive movement, and I'm not criticizing that, lots of good there, but some people were going, I just want depth. And that could either be better teaching, Tim Keller style, Holy Spirit stuff, Bethel style, or candles and formation, John Mark style, right? Whatever it may be, people were wanting, I want depth.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful desire. But with that, it's like, where does evangelism fit in that? Because we don't want our Sundays to be dumbed down. We want them to be rich and deep, and it's wonderful. But I'm going, well, that's great. I want that too. But how are we going to reach the lost? Because those Sundays are now very difficult for non-Christians to penetrate and be helped. And so in Raleigh, we lived in Raleigh for 4 years, pastoring there. And I said, the only real way to reach the lost is to create a separate environment for the lost, because they can't penetrate our Sundays, and we don't want to dumb them down. And so some will, maybe the dormant, the lapsed Christian, but not the Buddhist down the road. They have no idea what's going on. So out of necessity, I said, this is why Alpha exists. It's because we take the evangelistic burden off a Sunday and put it on a Tuesday night. And we create both of these spaces where we can concentrate on the people coming, the Christians on a Sunday and the non-Christians on a Tuesday. And really the model in my mind is when Jesus sees Zacchaeus up a tree and he said, hey, come down. He doesn't say to Zach, he doesn't say, hey, come to church on Sunday.
Right.
He says what? He says, I'm going to come to your house.
Yeah.
And I think that's more than just because I love you. I think it's because you and your friends need me to come to your safe space where I can actually sit with you. You'll be honest. You'll be open because it's your table. It's your space. I'm going to actually take the incarnation one step further and come to your house. And I think Alpha has created a space where the American church can do both of its desires really well. Disciple the following and help the exploring by creating almost our own Zacchaeus' house. And we call it Alpha. And we create a whole new vibe, a whole new environment to go, let's make it feel like as Zacchaeus' house. Let's get a venue that doesn't feel churchy. Where they feel like they can be honest and open. And we find most of our city are in that category. We think most of our evangelistic techniques or come to Sunday is really geared around the dormant, the lapsed Christian, but a huge percentage of our city are not in that category. They're just unchurched and other spiritualities. They'll never come to church. I know what that's like. I was petrified to go to church and I would never go. I had a panic attack the first time I went to HDB. I thought I would blow up in flames. But they created this other environment. So Lizzie and I are committed. I don't think we can do church without these two areas. We call them our two Sunday services, Sunday on Sunday and Sunday on Tuesday, because they're equally as important. And I therefore lead both of them. I go, this is the most important event of our week, our two Sunday services, Alpha and Sunday.
Wow.
And since the get-go, what that's done in our church, it's, first of all, it's relieved people that we're not dumbing down. They've got, oh, okay, Alpha is away from our Sunday and our Bible studies. Great. Secondly, everyone's got a non-Christian friend that their heart breaks for.
Yes.
And they've all been struggling with, but where do I bring them? And I don't feel equipped to be that apologist, that friendship evangelist. They won't listen to me because it's my spouse or my kid, and they're saying, thank you. We have now a place where we can bring them and they'll feel safe. And so our church, I think, is given their evangelistic kind of fire. It's fueled their evangelistic flame again. It has kind of gone out because they saw it as a threat to discipleship.
Yeah.
Now it's not a threat. It's actually something they can grow in themselves and get excited about. And so what it's done in our church is reignited evangelism. And reignited that hope of, my friend, there's hope for my friend because I can bring them. Yeah. And then I think secondly, fifthly, whatever I am now, is actually what it's also done. It's changed the church's posture towards the lost, away from animosity and fear of the culture war. Yes. You're taking away our rights. You're putting doctrine into schools we don't agree with. It's actually by being in an alpha group with the lost, they suddenly realize, oh my gosh, they've been through so much trauma. Yeah. They hear their stories and they have empathy for them. And that they suddenly realize, well, no wonder. No wonder they're making these decisions, or no wonder they're deciding to do these, because listen to what they've been through. No one really comes to a faith position by reading a book.
No.
They come to a faith position mostly through pain, traumatic life experience. And it's when you sit and listen to those stories, what began as you're threatening our privileged position in society as a Christian, to I'm so sorry what happened to you. And I just want to love you because I didn't realize you've been through so much, and that's probably why your heart is so hardened.
I want to pause our conversation for a moment and say a special thank you to our partners at World Vision. World Vision has spent decades empowering the most vulnerable children around the world. And now, in partnership with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and our friends here at Barna, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of the kids and teens in your care. Parenting the Open Generation offers 9 practical principles to help you navigate the real challenges today's teens are facing and to support their faith formation in meaningful, grounded ways. Download Parenting the Open Generation at worldvision.org/resilient26. Again, that's worldvision.org/resilient26. We've also linked to it in today's show notes. Okay, back to our conversation.
One of the things that people may not know if they're not familiar with Alpha is it's not set up like an apologetics thing, And you give us the quick sketch of if someone were to do the 8-week version of it, what are some of the topics, and then give us a quick guide of how do you guide your table facilitators, because I think that's the secret sauce is you're teaching people the art of curiosity instead of arguments and that kind of so topics first and then the training thing. Yeah.
I think Alpha makes sense when you do one thing. You actually imagine your favorite non-Christian friend. You have to imagine your favorite non-Christian friend. And you go, well, they don't want simplistic answers. They don't want Bible verses. They've maybe heard it all before. But they want to go on a journey of exploration themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so Alpha goes, well, why don't we create 8 weeks where we do 2 things? We share what we believe, mm-hmm. and then we want to hear what you believe. Mm-hmm. And I have the privilege from the front, or some other people do, to share the beauty of Jesus. And then in the group, we want to hear what you believe. But the last thing you want is someone to teach and preach at you and give you simplistic answers in a group. Yeah. And so we want to actually absolutely love and listen to what you have to say. And in fact, we're not going to give you any answers in the group because you're waiting for that. And you'll only actually want to know about Jesus once you genuinely feel that we've wanted to know about you first.
Yeah.
And so the topics, what's interesting, the topics on Alpha are not the typical apologetic defeater questions, because actually what Alpha tapped into was people firstly need to be drawn to Jesus, the beauty of Jesus, before they actually approach those apologetic questions with sincerity. Mm-hmm. If you're not drawn to Jesus by his beauty and his glory, and these talks talk about his love and why he went to the cross for you and what it's like to have a relationship with him, and he can guide your life, and oh my gosh, he sounds amazing, I wish it was true. That's what the Alpha talks do. And then they go, hang on, I wish it was true, but what about violence in the Old Testament? But they're now approaching that question not from a gotcha. Mm-hmm. They're approaching it from I wish Jesus was true. I kind of would like that to be true. Help me with this.
So good.
And so when people try and do Alpha, they go, these aren't the questions that people are asking. They think they're asking all the apologetic questions. And if you do Alpha and change the talks to apologetic questions, you'll have a very boring world religion class.
Yeah.
And we don't, so people want to see the beauty of Jesus and then be in a group where we go, but we want to hear what you feel. We want to hear your story. And so many times on Alpha, people say to me when they tell me their story of coming to faith is, I didn't trust a Christian. I thought you were just out of the target for your sales pitch. I didn't think you really cared about me. But actually that I now actually trust you because you listened to me for 8 weeks. You heard my story. And now I actually want to listen to what this Jesus guy is. But sometimes that takes 8 weeks for people.
Right.
To actually go from hard to soft.
Yes.
Through being loved and not gotcha quick answers.
That's so well said, man. And it's one of my favorite things about Alpha is, week 1 is like, is there more to this life? And then, the week 2 talk, who is Jesus? Right away. You're right. It's about, are you drawn to this Jesus thing? And when we train, new volunteers or table hosts in it, it's the sentence stem that we're always training them. When someone says something, could be completely outlandish, to go, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
It's so good. It's so good. I love it. I love it.
And I mean, that alone would change our cultural engagement if just the tell me more, like that idea, And now you do something that's unique at Vintage, several things when you run Alpha, and I don't want to get into all that. Everyone listening who's curious should come out to LA and go to one of your master classes. It's absolutely incredible. But you set the environment. It's a huge party. There's a great, food and beverage station. Of course, there's a meal and all this stuff. But at some point during the 8-week journey, you end up doing an optional after party kind of Q&A thing. What are you finding from the questions people are asking in this sort of optional Q&A thing?
Yeah, well, before I get to that, just to retrace the steps a bit. I mean, we did Alpha and it was struggling. And we did Alpha to begin with, and after about 5 Alphas, no one was coming. And we thought we'd give up. And we had that age-old belief, well, maybe Alpha doesn't work in LA. Maybe our soil is too hard. And which every pastor thinks their soil is hard or harder, right? And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, why isn't our Alpha working? And we identified, actually, when we were honest, about 30 or 40 barriers to why Alpha wasn't thriving. And we said, we're going to do the hard work in overcoming each of those barriers. We're not going to change Alpha. And when we overcame them, when we started to overcome them, we saw Alpha go from 0 to 400, 500 that it is now. So, and that's non-Christians. We don't let Christians do Alpha because there's no room. So one of the reasons why it wasn't working, particularly around why guests weren't sticking around, was because they were frustrated with the small group experience, which was, I love the fact that we're all just talking about our stories and experiences, but eventually there came a point in week 3, week 4, week 5, when someone would go, okay, I actually do want to know, is there evidence for the resurrection, or I actually do want to know this question. What's the answer? And we're going, how interesting. We don't have the answers. And they got frustrated. Yeah. And I totally empathize with that. Yeah. And actually the Alpha recipe is to give people the answers, just not in the small group time. And historically, that would be through books. Nikki would always go, look, here's a case for Christ, here's a book. And people, when I was doing Alpha way back in the 16th century, we used to read, right? We would take those books home and read, but no one does in LA. So I said, well, we've got to help them do basically a live version of what Nikki would recommend as reading. And so by week 4, I said, look, stick around afterwards. We have a pub here. Stick around afterwards and have an open Q&A for about an hour from 9 till 10 o'clock at night. No question off limits. Wow. And what we found was by week 4, their heart is soft because they've actually seen the beauty of Jesus. They've been loved. They've seen that these Christians want to love them. So they're softer in their heart towards these questions. And oh my gosh, the questions are anything and everything, ranging from, violence in the Old Testament, the classics, to is manifestation the same thing as prayer? How can Jesus be the Son of God if, all this kind of stuff. But also, into deep trauma questions that the non-Christian goes, can Jesus truly heal me of anxiety and depression?
Wow.
They're looking at the beauty of Jesus and the stories of Jesus, and they're starting to go, can he actually do something for me? Yeah. Can he change my life? So you've got the whole gamut. And what we find, Glenn, is we actually have people, I see them in the audience, like tears coming down because they're starting to realize what they thought was a insurmountable obstacle to following Jesus.
Yes.
These answers are lowering now. And literally I see tears going, I can do that. I can follow Jesus.
Come on, man. I love that.
And it's such a beautiful moment. And we have lots of people born again who would go back to, the group was amazing. I felt loved and safe and heard. And then I was helped in the talk, and then really helped with my specific questions in the Q&A. And so we teach people how to do all these things at the masterclass. But it's a long night. I'm there till 10 o'clock and I got a stack of questions. But man, Glenn, this is what pastoring is. This is any place you'd rather be. I don't know. No. When I'm up there, with the microphone and the stack of index cards.
Yeah.
And I'm reading them going, this is why we trained. This is why we went to seminary. This is why we're called to ministry right here.
You're so inspiring to me, Ger. I came back from our time together, overseas, and was talking to our team, and I'm like, man, I want to be around Alpha more. I at the current moment, I come maybe once or twice. I do one of the talks and hang around. And after hearing this Q&A thing, I'm like, man, I want to be part of that. I want to do that.
Oh, mate, you'd be amazing at it. You'd be brilliant.
I don't know if I would or not, but I know I would love it. I think just knowing the questions people are asking, and I think this is the thing for so many of us in church ministry. I said this earlier. We get so insulated by church ministry stuff and all and I love it. I love strategy. It's all great. At the same time, if we are not out there with the real shifts, we can talk all we want about the data and the shifts or whatever in the culture. But man, you got to hear real stories. You got to look people in the eye and hear
100%.
their pain. So I love that you're doing that.
And I think it's a real gift for pastors. Let's be honest, we don't have a lot of time to walk around the streets of Costa Mesa or Los Angeles, but you get a intensive, rapid awareness of what the culture is doing through an alpha group.
Yep.
Because you've got 10 non-Christians just being raw and honest. And you're there going, this is the best exegetical learning of our culture I could possibly. And it changes every 3 years. I've noticed it changes. The questions that people ask, the struggles that people ask. There are subtle shifts happening. Yeah. Wow. And it's fascinating to see them. That informs then everything. It informs our preaching on Sunday. Yep. It informs everything.
100%, man. Okay, so the last thing I want to get to is there's a stat that Barna found in some research on Gen Z teens. So this would be, on the tail end here. Of course, I know younger teens are more in alpha now, Gen Alpha, not to be confused with this alpha ministry. But 83% of Gen Z teens, Christian Gen Z teens said, letting your actions speak rather than using words to explain your faith to someone is more likely to create a positive response among non-believers. And then half of them actually believe that counts as an act of evangelism. Now, I think at one level, I think I know where this is coming from. They're reacting to what you described earlier as the questionnaire thing, the if you died tonight, the real obnoxious. What they think of when they think of evangelism is a sales pitch and a heaven or hell kind of, fearful thing. So I understand that impulse, but man, your description about the Q&A thing, people actually do want answers. So how would you gently challenge some of the younger folks to go, man, the words might be important here?
Well, it's that age-old adage. We all grew up with this, I think, is, preach the gospel, use words if you have to, right? And I had that when I was 15.
Yeah.
And so it's the same problem all the time, right? It's, we want people to hear the gospel and experience the gospel. And one without the other is incomplete. And I say to people, look, I was not a pastor I was in a normal job, like for 12 years. And yeah, you have to be careful. You're not there to preach at your colleague. You're not there but you are there to be a compelling curiosity through your actions. And they can connect the dots with you as a Christian. So those are the two things that your task is. They know you're a Christian, and they connect the dot of this is why you are the way you are in your compelling kind of, if you follow Jesus faithfully around non-Christians, you blow them away because the way of Jesus in the world is so countercultural. Yeah. But they have to connect the dots that you're a Christian. And so I would say to people, look, the easiest thing in the world is going on Monday morning when people say, hey, how was your weekend? This is what I would do every Monday. I was longing for the question. Hey, how was your weekend, Ger? It's like, brilliant. Went to the pub Friday night, Saturday morning, woke up late, watched the rugby, then went out for lunch, went to a club. I used to club a lot. Went to a club Saturday night, went to church on Sunday. And I'll tell you what, I know you don't believe in God or anything, but I got to say, I think I had a profound moment with God on Sunday. It rocked me, actually.
Wow.
But then I went for lunch, and then last night was just a quiet night. I'm not preaching.
That's amazing. No,
I'm being authentic because they asked me a question. I'm not hiding what God did in my life because they asked me. I'm not using it as a door to then preach at them for 10 minutes. No, just being authentic.
Yeah.
If someone says, hey, Ger, how was, Thursday? How are you? You go, man, I'm really struggling today. A pastor who I really respect, fell, and he had an affair and it devastated his family. And it makes me really angry because people will now, I get really angry at that because that's not the way of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, how was your night? I'm just being authentic.
I love that, man. You're not screening out a very real part of your life. So step one, have an integrated faith in your life.
Have an integrated faith, vocally and in deed. Vocal and deed. Be fully integrated.
Yeah.
You're not trying to preach at them. And then what I would pray for, Lord, all my friends will eventually actually go through a trial, a trauma, or a tension in their life where they'll be looking for something more. And I want them to go, I wonder, actually, Ger, can I take you for coffee? And I had so many people at work who go, Ger, can I take you for coffee? And it's like, my grandma died. I wish I had your faith. I don't know what to do. Or, Ger, I had lots of people like my grandma died, my mum died. And it was like, can you help me with Bible verses at the funeral? And so often that would start their journey, but they knew where to go. They respected my lifestyle. I would never lie at work. I would always, all this kind of thing. They bought me a Jesus action figure because I was a Christian on the floor. But I think it's a matter of being fully integrated, not hiding, but not trying to use opportunities to preach at people.
Dude, that is incredible. And your 3 T's there on this podcast, people know we love alliteration. So a trial, trauma, and attention. I'm going to carry that because you're right. You just kind of have that consistent. So to the Gen Z impulse of like living is yes, and it's a yes and. Okay, we man, I could talk to you for hours, but we've got to land this plane. Ger, you are an Arsenal fan. And congrats on winning the league. Well, first of all,
we won the league.
You won the league. I'm a Man United fan. I have not been able to watch games very much, and we're a sorry team at the moment.
Well, with how bad you are, it's very hard to watch your games.
Yeah, that's also true. Fair. I opened myself up for that. Now, Ger, tell our listeners who may not be as tuned into world soccer, because you won the league, you played in the UEFA Champions League. You made it to the UEFA Champions Final, which is kind of like the Super Bowl of Super Bowls.
It is.
You played Paris Saint-Germain, PSG. And what happened in that game?
Oh, mate. My son and I were at a pub and we were watching it in LA with about 400 other people. But Arsenal brought their best effort to defeat one of the best attacking teams we've seen. And so we brought our defensive block. We thought, you know what? We happened to score after 6 minutes.
You went up early.
We scored after 6 minutes through a rebound, and then we were able an amazing shot by Havertz. But then we thought, let's hold on to it. Let's be defensive. I just think if you're ever defensive, you're holding your breath, and eventually they scored and eventually we lost. So that holding your breath and being defensive is always a dangerous tactic.
You know where I'm going, Ger.
I know. Here we go.
Where I'm going. So this is the thing, is sometimes we share this data of people being open to God, and maybe there's reports for headlines of revival, Gen Z. That's great. But to me, the job is far from done. From done. And so what I love about this conversation with you, Ger, is we want to be offensive, but not offensive, stay on the offense, but without being offensive,
Yes.
And there is a way to kind of stay. We've got more ground to take. There are people that are in pain. There are people that are lost. There are people that are waiting for this. And so we should not congratulate ourselves and go, look at this. We've turned the tide. Far from it. And evangelism needs to be on the forefront of our churches. So I would just love if you would close us in prayer, pray over our listeners that we would be inspired with fresh boldness, fresh strategy, fresh humility to meet the world around us.
Yeah, amen. Amen. All right, let's pray. So, Lord, I thank you that you have called each and every one of us to share your love with those around us. And Father, we remember Acts 16, where Paul had a vision of a man of Macedonia begging for help. And Father, I thank you that you don't move us out of obligation or religious duty, but you break our heart for those who are lost. That you never actually said to Paul, go to Macedonia. You showed him a man begging for help, and that captured his heart. So Lord, I pray each and every one of us would again have a broken heart for the lost around us, that we would remember what it was like not to know Jesus, that we would walk the streets around our churches and look at the drawn curtains and the closed doors and ask, Lord, remind us of what's happening behind those doors, behind those curtains. Let us not just put our noise-cancelling headphones in and just sing worship songs, but Lord, let us hear the cries of the lost. Break our hearts. And Lord, I know that when you break our hearts, we're a hostage to those cries. And give us practical ways that we can then follow those cries and bring the gospel to those around us, whether it be Alpha or something else. Lord, help us with wisdom, what it means to love well those in our city who are desperately trying to do the best in life without you. So Lord, break our hearts. Fill us with your Holy Spirit, that we may actually bring your love and your truth and your gospel to those in our city. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. So good to talk to you, my friend. Thank you for that.
Bless you, mate. Love you.
Well, thanks for joining us for the Resilient Pastor podcast. If this conversation encouraged you, share it with a fellow pastor or leader. You can find more Barna research and resources at barna.com. And again, thank you to one of our partners, World Vision. Together, in partnership with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and the Barna team, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of the kids and teens in your care. Download Parenting the Open Generation at worldvision.org/resilient26. Well, thanks for watching and listening to the Resilient Pastor podcast, and we will see you next season.